The Davison-Johnson combination adding to the depth of Ford's capability at the Bathurst 1000 this year. One driver who won a championship for them, a couple of them in fact, who won't be here this year for the first time in some time, is Marcos Ambrose. It was a big announcement last year that he was going to head overseas to take on NASCAR in the United States. Even for a driver with Marcos's capability, he's driven open wheelers in Europe. You can't just step straight into the top level of NASCAR. There are several tiers of racing, and he had to move into what is called the Truck Series. What is a truck in NASCAR? Well, Marcos is about to tell us.
Well, last year I was up on the mountain with you guys racing the V8 supercar circuits around the track for 6.5 hours. It didn't end that well, but up to that point we're having a good time. A lot's happened to me since then, and in 2006 I won't be at Bathurst. I'll be running one of these great machines. This is a NASCAR truck. It's basically my little baby. I've got 8 of these at the workshop I can use any time. I just want to run through the differences between V8 supercar and the Truck Series, and in particular this Ford F150 that we have here. The most striking thing on the engine front is we have a carburetor. Now that sounds a little odd, I guess, for most modern motor vehicles. Pretty much no one builds a carburetor these days, but NASCAR is all about control. They're all about what worked in 1980 works now for the spectators and for the spectacle on the racetrack. So we have a nice big carburetor here. The motor itself, you know, it's a pretty big V8 motor. It revs to about 9,000, 9,200, producing just over 730 horsepower, depending on what kind of track we go to and what configuration the motor's in. We run really big radiators to keep the motor cool, because we want to tape up the front end for our downforce as much as we can. So this is a thin radiator for a short track, but on the big racetracks we can run a radiator maybe this big. It's just a workhorse, you know. The suspension is big and tough. They're designed to bounce off walls, so we build everything to be nice and strong as we can. This one here is just being set up for a race this weekend, but it's got a lot of work, a lot of beefing suspension. This is a big heavy spindle, heavy duty. You can pretty much knock the wall down before that'll break. Let's move on to the cockpit. So this is the driver's zone. This is the part I like to talk about, because you know, I'm about going fast and driving cars fast, and these trucks are designed for purely speed. There's no fancy stuff in here. It's pretty basic. You run a really big steering wheel on the speedways because you don't want to oversteer the car, because that'll get you in a lot of trouble. So you run a very slow steering rack, maybe a 16:1 ratio on the bigger circuits. You run a heavy duty seat. This seat is actually aluminium. They used to have carbon fibre seats, but they found the drivers were getting hurt in them. The aluminium is actually designed to flex when you have a big impact. And I know from experience that when you have a decent shun in one of these things, the seat can shift up to 3 inches one way when you have a sidewall impact. So safety features in this thing are pretty intense. We run a really big safety net, which you can see here. And this at the same time, they run it that taut and that stiff. It's actually an aerodynamic tool. They run it so the wind won't come into the cockpit, the wind will come around the side and go to the back wing. We run analog gauges, unlike V8 supercar where you have all the nice modern technology with data acquisition and digital readouts. We don't have any of that when we go racing, because NASCAR, again, they like to control the rules, and they decided that analog gauges are the way to go. So there's just no fancy stuff. It's all about functionality and about going quick. We'll move on now to the aero. This is a truck. You can see they call them a truck, we call them utes. Basically it's a big flat tray. It's got a lot of overhang off the rear wheels, so the wheelbase is the same as a normal NASCAR push or a cup entry. It's just to get the body shape right, they've had to push the rear end back a long way. Subsequently, they've got a really big back spoiler. Now this is a downforce device. It's basically like towing a caravan behind your standard motor vehicle, because it generates a lot of downforce, but at the same time it's got a massive amount of drag. So on the bigger speedways, we try and minimise drag. We get the side cabin of the body here to run more up and down, and it takes the wind off the back spoiler. These Romeo windows, these are Perspex. These are designed for a downforce vehicle. Then this is being set up for a downforce track, because the air will circulate inside here and get forced straight to the back wing. If we didn't have these here, air would fall off the sides and dissipate away from the car. We don't want that. We want the air to come over the back as much as we can. Everything's pretty standard. We have a 22-gallon fuel cell. It's designed to stop us probably about every 50-60 laps on a normal racetrack, and that way when we race our vehicles for a 200-mile race, we're probably going to stop 2 or 3 times at a minimum. So it's another way they spice up the racing. You know, I miss V8 Supercar, but this is a pretty good substitute, I've got to tell you. I wish I was at Bathurst with you this year running around the racetrack, but I know one thing for certain, I won't be up in the cutting yelling at Greg Murphy, will I? I'll be a long way from him. So good luck to all the racers out there. I hope Ford wins for the day, and I wish I was there.
Thanks to Marcus for that fascinating tour, and good luck to him too. It was announced only in the last couple of days that he has taken the next step up. He is now one level off the very top in NASCAR racing, and he's climbed extremely quickly. That's good news for his career.